Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Motivation Monday. Kathy and I are both with you with a really, really interesting topic for today and this week, which is about spiritual warfare. We never have talked about that much, so we're excited to do that today. And over the past few weeks, we've been talking about stay slow, the first couple letters, which is spirit and thoughts. And so, what we've talked about is surrendering your spirit to God. And then we've also talked about capturing your thoughts and make those obedient to God. So hopefully you started noticing some of these things in your personal inner life and other things you're doing.
Yeah, that's been our big takeaway. Our lives tend to move in the direction of what's happening inside of us. And so a surrendered spirit and a surrendered mind create a completely different life.
But this week we wanted to answer something important, and that is if spirit and thoughts are so important, why is it so hard to keep them surrendered?
Why do we wake up with peace and then lose it by lunchtime? Or why do we know the truth but still find ourselves worrying? Or why do we pray about something and then immediately start trying to control it?
So here is what's so powerful, very different from anything just the world would say. We are in a real battle that's happening all the time. And that's what we're going to talk about this week, that spiritual battle, the battle for your spirit, the battle for your mind, because the enemy knows something. If he can influence your spirit and your thoughts, everything else becomes easier to influence in your life too.
Yeah, and spiritual warfare isn't something that just happens in dramatic, scary moments. Sometimes it looks like just being fearful or comparison or even anxiety. And sometimes it looks like believing a lie that steals your peace.
Yeah, so I'll give you a true life example. It happened to me several years ago. I was studying for this license that I needed for my job. And there's supposedly this 2-week course that I didn't get to take. And so I'm trying to study this on my own. I'm 2 days away from the actual test, and I am failing these practice tests miserably. And I'm starting to get worried. I'm starting to forget things. I'm starting to wonder what happens if I disappoint people, if I don't get it, what happens at my job. And it started spinning, and I could tell that it was making me worse and making my focus get way off track. And so even before I sat down to take the test, the battle was already happening in my mind.
That's what's so interesting, Brian, is that the test wasn't even the real battle. Your thoughts were.
Absolutely. And so that spiritual warfare doesn't usually begin in your circumstances, it begins in your actual thoughts. So think about this. Ephesians 6:12 says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. So the enemy attacks there first.
Yeah, because if he can steal your peace, he does not have to change your circumstances.
That's exactly right. We shove ourselves right off track because we're not focused on God. And so what I had to do was I stopped studying and I said, I can't get through the day or the test like this. And so I just started praying and I said, God, I need your help. And so this verse came to mind and it brought this huge peace over me. It was 2 Corinthians 12:9. It says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. So God wasn't promising I'd pass the class. He wasn't promising that it would be easy. What he was promising is he's with me, do my best. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. His grace is there. And that reminded me where my confidence belonged.
Thank you for sharing that story, Brian. That's such an important distinction. Your situation didn't change, but your spirit did.
Yeah. So in all of that, my thoughts were saying, what if I fail? God is saying my grace is sufficient. It's two opposing things. So what if I'm not enough? God was saying my grace is sufficient and you are enough, or he's enough. And so your spirit and your thoughts matter. The enemy wants to actually corrupt them, and then everything else flows from that, whatever you're thinking.